this, this, this is not a forum for the police chief. We put this on the record. This is not a forum for the police chief, but it is our intention to be able to present to the mayor, since he's the ultimate decider of who the next chief will be, what the community is looking for from whoever becomes chief. All right? With being fully transparent, the Alliance, the Greater Hartford African American Alliance, has been in favor of a particular individual for several years now. But as an entity that has members who are vehemently in disagreement with one another, it's our intention as a body to lay out what we want from a potential chief, whoever that chief, may be. Because at the end of the day, they serve the community. And the idea and the notion behind that is that the mayor works for us, the police department serves us, but the police chief reports in theory to the mayor or the mayor's designee. And so we can't fire the police chief, but we can bring pressure on the mayor to be replaced or to resign. But if we don't, as a community, let the mayor and city council know what we want as a community from the police chief, then the mayor's going to appoint whoever he or she wants. In this case, it would be Mayor Arunan Arulampalum. So we need to ask the good questions. We need to ask the right questions. And so as the mayor prepares to have a citywide tour of potential candidates or whoever he selects, it's important that the community ask the right questions. Not like, what's your favorite restaurant? What do you feel about youth sports? Things that have nothing to do with public safety or policing. And so ideally, what we're going to do is we're going to be able to determine what the community wants so that we can make a resolution to present to the city council and the mayor and the community at large. And so that's why we've invited members of the community to come and just tell us what they think public safety is, as well as policing. Because I think a lot of people believe that policing is all there is to public safety. But public safety is deeper than policing. It's the community, If 90% of the problem with the Hartford's public safety issues as it pertains to crime is a breakdown in the community structure, then all the police in the world aren't going to fix that. So these are the kinds of questions that we need to be having in the discussions that each of you all will have in the circles of influence that you have. So what the Greater Hartford African American Alliance likes to do is to come to a consensus. All right, that doesn't mean everybody's on the same page, but on this one issue we can have a consensus. And the members of the Alliance each have a sphere of influence because many of the Alliance members are leaders in their own right. But never ever think that the Alliance members are all in lockstep and in agreement with one another, because many of them are not. All right, so we try and bring some of these opposing forces together so that we can, as a community, survive. Because we're not enemies. We don't have the luxury of not working together, because our community is suffering deeply. So whatever it is that you believe, whatever it is that you want to say it, because someone out there is in full agreement with you. All right, so we'll go around the room. We'll start with this young lady who has to leave first. I know she has to leave. I don't want to put her on the spot. She doesn't have to go first, but in deference to her being here at about 11 o'clock with the rest of us, and I know she has a hard 1:30 commitment, so we'll offer you the mic.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carrie K. Allen. I am a longtime resident of Hartford, Connecticut. We definitely had a discussion prior to us meeting in here outside. And what I just want to say regarding this issue today, it's not more say a question, but just comments and just observation and things I want people to know that are things that are on my mind, is that our community needs peace, and we're the only individuals that can bring peace to our community. The police, you know, their jobs is to control. Their job is to bring order. And if we continue to have that process happening, who brings peace to our community? There is no peace if we can't bring it or if it's not there, but we're responsible for that. So I think that everyone as an individual needs to really look into themselves and really value the community that they live in, value their neighborhood first, get to know your neighbors, go back to the times when you did know your neighbors, and, you know, connect with people and understand that the change starts with you, and then hopefully that can trickle down and the effects can become bigger of that. So those are my thoughts, and I'm hoping to learn more for the short time that I'll be here. I've learned a lot so far meeting everyone, and yeah, I'm looking for that change, and I want to be a part of that change. So thank you.
Thank you. You can pass the mic around. You can decide who goes next by handing the mic off.
I'm Derek Wilcox. I've been here all my life, and like she said, we had a nice discussion outside, and I was talking about how when I was growing up, you know, we had like the officer friendly programs and projects, so you know that's when we had a lot of families. Nowadays, it's more like it's single parent issue is a big issue in our communities, and no fathers around. These kids hang out all night. Nobody really cares. I mean, these kids can do whatever they want to do. You know, DCF, DSS, all in our lives, and we go through a lot. And I'm in favor of the program that's going on, and I believe, like I told McCauley, I said, the churches should have shut down today to come to this, because they have a big hand in controlling the community. So we can go pray, you know, nothing has changed. In my 54 years, same thing going on. Same thing is going on. We got all these beautiful schools, spend all this money on structurally building something pretty, but you gotta start within the family. Bring the fathers back, let them reconcile their differences. I think that will solve the problem. Once the fathers get back in the house, and the mothers just, you know, get over there, whatever they get over, and that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I was here at 11 o'clock, so
Yes,
I'm
he
not going to stay
was.
here all day. I came expecting to hear from the next police chief, but seeing how that's not going to happen right now, you're going to hear from me. And my thoughts are, the police in Hartford, to me, this is all my opinion. I don't represent anybody else. I'm a longtime resident of Hartford. I believe in Hartford. I believe that the perception affects how we are treated. And I believe that the people that live here should have more control. And the job of the police is to protect and serve. And I see them being woefully negligent in certain parts, because for the last 10 to 20 years, there's been on average 30 to 35 killings of young men and women in Hartford. And the police come around and they do the cleanup. And it affects the quality of life of the youth, the quality of life of the family members left behind when a family member gets killed. And personally, from a personal perspective, I lost a nephew last year. He was killed in Hartford. His mother has yet to find out what happened to her son. And the police are telling her that there's no cameras, there's no evidence, there's no nothing that we can do. And I find that unacceptable, because I know there's cameras. The police chose not to use them for traffic, but they use them for criminal investigations, but they don't want to mix the two up. And I see that as a problem because one affects the other. There's a lot of stress in people's lives right now. And all it takes is somebody to come down the street and run a stop sign to tick you off at the wrong time for you to become the next victim of violence. And I think the next chief should look at the whole picture, how everything is interrelated, the crime, the anxiety, the uncertainty in people's lives that's going on right now, so that if you can't do the whole community thing, because all we have is family and community, you know, we learn from them both, but if you can't look at the whole picture and become proactive instead of reactive, you're not doing your job. I believe that the police should be more reactive. And I don't mean controlling people's movements as being proactive. It's just follow the law. Because everybody wants the police when they have a problem. Some decide to go undercurrent, underground, and use the police, use street justice. But when something happens to them, now they want to call the police. You can't have it both ways. And I believe that the chief should be sensitive to knowing the line between those two worlds. That's just my input.
All right, thank you for sharing. Next, please step up. Can you have the
All right,
floor?
hello. Good afternoon, y'all. My name is Sagacity Walker, longtime resident of Hartford. And so on community policing and policing in general, some of the things that come to the forefront of my mind is, you know, the environments that contribute to folks getting into more criminal behavior and whatnot. And when we think about policing and community policing, it's not just thinking of it as the law coming in to, you know, arrest somebody, but also thinking about what type of support and services folks need before they get involved in criminal behavior. I think that's important. And then with that, also like what's going on with our schools to make sure that we're building more pro-social behaviors for children and more interventions for children to stay on the proper path. And then if they do mess up, if they happen to mess up, you know, whether they're in high school or whatever, what type of support are we giving them so in that way they can get back on the right track and stay on the right track. And also, I think it's important to provide support for people who are returning home from prison, who may have a felony or something like that, because if you're, say, you know, a lot of the programs that are helping to keep people out of the American justice system are for like job training and whatnot is like from 18 to 24 or something. What happens to that person who's like 30, 31, 32 years old who wants to get their life back together? That's much more difficult. So when I think of policing, I don't just think of it as police coming in and putting the people in handcuffs. I also think of it as just what are we doing to make sure that there's not as much of a need for police to do that, but what can we do to create the environments so that way there will be less drug use, there will be less gangs, etc. Because you know, our living conditions are a marker or a predictor of those type of things, right? What type of job opportunities are there for young folks beyond the summer job opportunities that they have, right? Because anybody who's 16, 17 years old wants to start to, you know, take care of themselves and prove themselves, assert themselves, etc. Are we giving them those opportunities? So when I think of policing and community policing, etc., those are the things that come to my mind, is how are we supporting our young folks and our people who are trying to reintegrate back into society and creating an environment where it's easier for folks to do their best, to pay their rent, to, you know, et cetera, just to live. So then that way there's less of a need for police intervention, especially when it comes to, you know, violent police intervention. So that's me. I'll pass it off to
Thank you, sir. You can take my little lippy with me. Trying to make a wider lens.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Christopher Dukes. I'm the president of American Justice Project, but I'm also a member of the Alliance. I've been, in 2 weeks will mark my 20th year living in Hartford as a homeowner. And my message is simple. What I hope that the Alliance adopts and what I hope moves forward to the City Council is that they will join other cities. We have a verbal commit right now in Cambridge, Massachusetts to end the chokehold, which we call. And so I want to point out a couple of references There was a book written by Paul Butler, former prosecutor, African-American man, that talks about the use of the chokehold in policing. The chokehold is a series of abusive tactics that are used against guilty and the innocent to get folks to come in line. Sometimes there is coerced plea bargains and so forth, but these are abusive tactics. I can tell you, speaking from experience, one of the toughest ones can be being separated from your families. I heard a couple times people talk about bringing fathers back or so forth. Well, when fathers are separated from their families, it's just as hard as when mothers are separated from the families as well too. But when they're being separated intentionally to get them to fall in line or to get them to submit to authority, especially when it's wrong, it's a problem. And the impact leads to wrongful incarceration in so many ways. I do have enough handouts, I think, for folks in the room. But on the back of it, you will see the impact is close to 3,500 people in our country that we know of. And there's thousands of more that are out there that we don't know of or that are being working on right now are wrongfully incarcerated thanks to the chokehold. Out of these almost 3,500, the chokehold was used in every single one of them. 15% of those people, so you're talking about almost 500 people, were coerced into plea bargains for crimes they did not commit simply because of the use of the chokehold. There's another resource, Smoke But No Fire. Again, one of our pillars is public education, so we want to make sure that folks are aware of these resources out here. This studies all of those wrongful incarcerations I told you about, and even points out the fact that there's more than, out of those 3,500, over 900 of them were for crimes that never even happened. But the official records say they did. And then to give you a good example, if you don't know about the Central Park Five, the individuals who are, all of their original records say that they were guilty. All of them. If you read all the police reports, you read all the detective reports, it all paints these 5 individuals as guilty. They were convicted only to be exonerated years later. So that's the problem. Is the problem was at the very start of the case. But ultimately, what Carrie mentioned earlier with others is Ruha Benjamin was here in September. Viral justice. We need to make injustice go to sleep permanently. We need to end the chokehold, but we need to make justice viral. We need to make justice the norm. And it starts with us, but it also starts with the police department. So I look forward to having a police chief, whomever she or he may be, to come forward and make sure that at least in Hartford, they commit to not using the chokehold. I already had a private conversation with our current mayor about this during one of the tours. This needs to stop. This is how you gain public trust, by not abusing their policy. So I hope, or violating their rights. So I hope to be around to participate in the conversation a little longer, and that will conclude my time. Who would like to go next? All right. Let me grab my.
Thank you. Hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Camille Thomas. I am also a lifelong resident of Hartford, born and raised. Everyone, if I could just say whatever I like to say, frankly, I've noticed that several people have stated what they would like in a police chief. I am not representing any body, any entity, any organization. I'm representing myself. I think that we should tell the mayor who we want. And the individual who I would like is sitting right here. His name is Lieutenant Paul West. He is a police officer in the police force for 22 years. He has a bachelor's and 2 master's degree. He is from Hartford. He is educated. He understands the hood. He understands the plight of the black man, I would say, and he understands everyone in this room because he has family who looks just like us and has shared experiences just like us. I'm going to ask everyone to support me in this endeavor in supporting Lieutenant Paul West. This is the person you see right here, right now. You don't have to have like, oh, I want, I wish, I like. This is what it is. And we spoke about, you, sir, spoke about what you would like in a police chief. And I do feel that the person who gets the job has to have these characteristics instilled in them. It can't be someone who we said we want X, Y, and Z, and all of a sudden they're going to raise to the plate and the platform and actually become this magical person. Unfortunately, the characteristics instilled in what many people are saying in this room and many people would like is instilled in Lieutenant Paul West. And that's it. Thank you.
So, good afternoon. My name is Cynthia Jennings, and I'm a civil rights attorney and an environmental attorney. But for the most part, I spend most of my time in civil rights and the violation of the rights of particularly people of color and people who are living in communities that are underserved. And I think that we really need to take a look at when we're dealing with what's happening to our communities, we look at what's happening in our school system, what's happening politically. I'm very concerned about the high amount that we have of voter suppression and the low voter turnout that we're having. It's not just bad for the outcomes of the people in this room and in this community. It is bad for, in terms of money, how much money we get in this community to address our needs. We have already lost a congressperson in the state of Connecticut because of low voter turnout. We've had an astronomical or a voter turnout that was lower than we've ever had in the city of Hartford before, which means that when the money is divided up, if they divide it up, and they do based on how many people are actually voting and involved in the process, then we are going to be shortchanged again. Our children, most of our children are living in poverty now. Most of the children, most of the families are women heads of household in Hartford. And a lot of the children, like the men here, are concerned, and I think they should be concerned about the fact that men are being systematically incarcerated, systematically dying at a much younger age, systematically the victims of violence. So we have to, as a people and as residents of this community, we need to stop what's happening to people of color in our communities. And we need to do that by being further involved in, or directly involved in, not just voting, but when somebody does something and does something against our community, run against them. Do not allow people to disrespect us and not step up and do what has to be done. When we want somebody to be, or we want there's a state statute in Cintron versus Vaughn, a federal consent decree that was here for almost 50 years. And then the current police chief just decided that he wanted that Cintron versus Vaughn sunset, which means ended. And the reason Cintron versus Vaughn was here for almost 50 years is because Hartford itself, the city of Hartford, was underrepresenting people who lived in the city of Hartford on the police force. And it was underrepresenting the number of people that are promoted on the police force, and it was underrepresenting the number of people that were fired from the police force. So when you're talking about who's eligible anyway, the eligibility requirements are very high for the police department. We had not enough women on the police force. We have a city that's almost 50% or more run by women of color in the families. And that means that we need to have a representative part of representation on the police force and every other area and every other department in the city. So when we're talking about what's happening to our kids in the school system, our children don't even have an opportunity when they get out of the Hartford school system because of the amount of non-teaching that's going on. And it's not just the teachers. We have problems we have a high disparity of the number of people that are sick in this community. We had trash incinerators where 70 towns plus New York City were bringing their garbage, burning it in Hartford. They had a landfill that was being being stored, garbage was being stored in there. And people in that, around that landfill, we had a street called Sunset Street, and Helen Nixon had an organization called Survivors on Sunset. And when I met her many years ago, I said, why do you have that organization? And she said, because 7 of the men that live on Sunset Street are dead from cancer, and the other 2 have cancer. She lost 2 husbands on Sunset Street. So I can tell you that that gave me PTSD, and that put me on a path of making sure that landfill was shut down, and then that later on that the trash incinerators were shut down, because the high rate of asthma for the young people in the community, particularly around the trash incinerators, meant that they were missing a lot of time out of school. A lot of the children were dying early. So and a lot of the seniors also had very bad respiratory conditions. In fact, if you were a senior in Hartford, if you're 55 or over, and that's probably most of us here, if you're over 55 or over, then you're in a city that had the highest death rate of seniors in the state. So your possibility of living longer in Hartford if you're a senior is far less than West Hartford, okay, like a 20-year difference. Okay, so we have to recognize what we're dealing with. Bridget Prince and myself were working on this project in North Hartford that had to do with, what was it? It had to do with the high rate of raw sewage backup in the basements of North Hartford residents. And the fact that we pay the same amount of MDC built because that's what everybody pays, but we got less services, and we've been working on it. Now they're attempting to really step up and give us the services that we need. Why? Because people had no understanding that a lot of the people that live in these communities have lost 1 or 2 cars, have lost their furnaces and things in their basements and never had them replaced. And now they've finally gotten to the point where we can now have, we have money that's been committed from the Speaker of the House to help replace the people's problems with their basements, whatever they've lost. And now we've also worked to make sure that the businesses in this community have gotten that. So when you're talking about just policing, you're not talking about just the police department. Absolutely, I support Paul West for chief, but we also have a responsibility ourselves to run our communities, run our streets, and make sure that nothing goes on in this city that we don't want to happen. The things that we want to happen do happen. So I think that that's one of the things that we have to think about when we're talking about just policing. It's not just policing. It is making sure that we police our own communities. It's making sure that we do not have or succumb to voter suppression where they don't tell you there's an election, or they tell you there's an election, and all of a sudden, the numbers are not there. The numbers are not there. People are being people are being coerced into making sure that they support people that may not be in our best interest. So it's not just policing. We have to police our community in a number of ways. And I'm not talking about with guns and going door to door and all that. I'm talking about running our community, and those people who are most affected by it, which happen to be black men, because you're the highest incarcerated, the highest underemployed. Okay, so we really have to have people involved in a positive way to make sure that our children and our community have a future. Thank you.
Did everyone, would you like to speak?
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Shakai Dawani. I was born and raised in Hartford. I just bought my house on Westland Street. So, I know that there's a lot of trouble with the kids in the city. There's a lot of fights and gangs between the kids. and I would like to see that, you know, the police are able to have some type of relationship where we can get more help or involvement for the kids so that these types of issues aren't happening. My daughter had told me when I was out of town at the beginning of the year that, you know, 3 little boys that she knew stole a car on Albany Avenue and they crashed it into a house, and one of the little boys died and the other little boy was in the hospital, and the other 2 little boys was injured as well, and that was a serious incident where, you know, after experiencing so much trauma, these little boys were then arrested. So I want to make sure that, you know, when we're dealing with the kids, that we're understanding, you know, a lot of the problems and issues that they're facing. And then when we introduce policing onto the young people, that, you know, we're doing that through the lens of, you know, helping them to address these issues and get the services and assistance that they need, instead of punishing them and penalizing them, arresting them, and putting them through even more trauma when the problems resulted from trauma in the first place. So it's like re-traumatizing the children. There's a lot of issues around the children, so I just want to make sure that, you know, when we do have police come into the communities, that, you know, we're keeping our children safe and that the children are being represented as well.
All right. Thank you for sharing. Would you like to say something in terms of policing and public safety? What you would like to see? Yes. Mm-hmm. Sure. Go right ahead. Okay. Yes. So when they have yeah.
I wanted to add a footnote because I gave you information about what to do, but I didn't tell you about the impact of it. And what I wanted to show you is that this does practice. This man on this picture that you see, his name is Gordon Cole Jr. This man was abused by 5 officers from the Shelton Police Department in front of his children. And he was falsely arrested under 3 misdemeanors and 9 felonies. When we got together and exposed the chokehold that was being used in his case, the state attorney had no choice but to drop every single charge that this man was facing. However, they did, before we were getting involved, they coerced him into taking a plea bargain on a charge from previous years ago that they followed through, which that should have been dropped as well. But the bottom line is, I wanted to show you the impact. This man was facing 60 years in jail, and this man is home to be able to hold his children right now. This does not have to be a fatherless home. We don't have to have any more motherless homes as well. We need to stand tall and expose it when it's happening, stop it from being used already, make it illegal to use. The research has already been done. There's no more need for studying. It's time now to sit down to the table and stop or end what we call the chokehold. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we do have one last voice that hasn't spoken. You're on the spot, sir. Come on up here. Brother Paul West, Lieutenant West, is also a member of the Alliance. He's the chair of our Public Safety Committee. So just some general feedback on what you've heard as a, as someone who's a professional in terms of policing.
That was quite a generous introduction, if I might say so. I want to first start by saying I'm a little disappointed. I'm not discouraged because when I see things like this and outcomes like this, it makes me drive to work harder so the message and the communication aspect becomes stronger. But one of the main things I think our community is suffering from is apathy. This room should be filled from the front to the back because we have a lot of issues going on in the community that impact our lives. One of the issues this meeting was held was to discuss armed citizens and whether or not we believe that that was the right thing to do for citizens to be patrolling the neighborhood armed. I think when you are a law enforcement practitioner, you have to be sympathetic to both sides. So I'm not going to attack either side, but I want to give some food for thought about what's going on. It's not a question of whether or not you have the right to bear arms. We know that in December of 1791, the Second Amendment was ratified, which granted citizens the right to bear arms. That's not the conversation that I believe we should be having, whether or not you can bear arms. It's just the manner in which you do so. I would have loved to see the Armed Citizen Patrol be repackaged and refocused as an extension of a larger block watch. You know, we used to have block captains and block watches, and everyone looked out for each other. And it goes to that old adage, that old saying, if you see something, say something. We could have done a wonderful thing if we packaged it in that way, as opposed to just saying we got people out on the street with guns. Everyone is not comfortable with guns. Everyone doesn't want to hear that I'm armed and I'm guarded and I'm walking down the streets. To some people, that makes them just as fearful. So I think what we're lacking here is communication. We're lacking dialogue. I think all of these different groups should sit down and have a conversation because we can't operate and we cannot be successful existing in silos. We need coalitions, we need conversation, and we need teamwork. I don't want to bore you with statistics, but just look at it for a moment. We have about 120,000 people that live in this city, over about 18 square miles. So we're extremely densely populated. We're right on top of each other. That in itself can sometimes breed and bear aggression because we're right on top of each other. Whether you love each other or not, if you get around each other a lot, sometimes you get angry, you get upset, and that is what we do as human beings. Nobody's perfect. But knowing that, and knowing that we have 120,000 residents that live here and just under 370 police officers, any thinking person would say the police department can't do it alone. We don't have enough police officers. We don't have the resources to police a community that is as diverse as ours with just the police department. So we need these groups to come together. We need dialogue. We need this room to be filled when we call people to action. And we need plans that are viable, that is not just treating the symptoms of what's going on. We got to get to the root of the problem. And when we find what the root of the problem is, we got to start to treat it, find cures, and find ways that, like this gentleman said earlier, that are proactive to keep them from coming about again. Oftentimes we come together, we have vigils after someone is killed. We come together and we pray, and we come together as a group when someone loses their life, but we don't do it prior. I'd like to see a time come about when we come together on the neighborhood block just to say, hey, things have been going good for a while. We haven't had any murders. We haven't had any fights. We haven't had any disruption. Let's come out together and have a cookout. Let's see the little girls and boys play double dutch. Let's have people playing basketball like we used to do. This young man said he grew up in the projects. I remember when I was a kid, we were around the same age. We had the Olympics for the projects. Stowe Village, Nelton Court. We would have teams get together and we would have healthy and competitive competition in which you had pride from where you lived. And that also made you get to know the people in your neighborhood towns or your other projects, and we got along. We might have had fights, but we weren't killing each other. So I've also heard people say today that there's been a breakdown in the family structure. I wholeheartedly agree. You don't necessarily have to have the traditional family to be successful. There are successful families who don't have fathers in the home, who just have maybe a father or just have a mother. But the point of it is to have a structure in place to where we get the opportunity to place young people in the company and guidance of responsible adults. We have to then take, as the police department, and create positive interactions between our community and the police department. You can't always see the police when you're in trouble. You can't always see the police when you're hurt or you're afraid or you're ashamed. You have to be able to talk to the police officers. Years ago, we had walk beats on every main street around here: Blue Hills, Albany Avenue, Farmington Avenue, Park Street, Weathersfield. And what was so good about that is we knew each other. So although I'm making my comments today as the public safety chair of the African Alliance, I do have a special place for law enforcement because I've been doing it for 22 years. And I also was born in Hartford, and I'm from Hartford. So I think we have to reinstitute some of these things. We have to become partners again. You need to know who your police officers are. And I think one of my mantras when I speak about public safety and policing as it relates to the community, I always tell people I want them to know us before they need us. And the reason that's so important to me is we are inclined to speak to people who are similar to us, who we know, who we've seen, especially in times of crisis. You don't want to look to a stranger or a face that you don't know, who you don't identify with. And some of that is the reason, like Brother Duke said, you get chokeholds and things like that. Because when you have people coming in to police a neighborhood that they are not familiar with, they are afraid of you. And then when they become afraid of you, you're afraid of them, because nobody wants to be assaulted or hurt and put in a position where you fear for your life. So we got to have police, system of government, so we don't have lawlessness, but we have to do some things to make it more feasible so that people who have been marginally treated throughout history and disenfranchised have an opportunity to integrate themselves with police. And then the police department has to be honest about how demonized the police have been to people of color. Many people don't even realize policing was started when they gave slave catchers badges, and their duty was to hunt down and bring back slaves, in most cases by any means necessary. Move forward throughout history. We get into civil rights. What were police officers doing? They were sicking their German shepherds on people of color, particularly black people. They were standing next to the firefighters and spraying us with water hoses. We don't have a healthy relationship with police. But fortunately, in 2015, President Obama put together a task force and did some research to bridge this gap between the community and the police. And what that research uncovered was it's more effective to police a neighborhood when that police department reflects the neighborhood. And what that means is that we need to have more people who look like the people in this room policing the neighborhood. More importantly, we have to get rid of this mentality that everything is paramilitary and the police is not an occupying force. I believe the police department should be a collection of concerned community members that have assumed the awesome responsibility to provide peace and coverage and care for the community. So we've moved away from this mentality where we were warriors, where we go out and we just lock people up and put handcuffs on people and that was the end of it and you ask questions later. We now have to be guardians. We have to be part of the community and we have to have conversations. We have to have interactions with the community so that we can get along. Because the ideal situation between police and the community is voluntary compliance. If you have voluntary compliance, a lot of this aggression that we're talking about, a lot of this abuse, a lot of these chokeholds, a lot of this just inability to communicate will start to dissipate. Because our goal should be voluntary compliance. We should make the neighborhoods so welcoming that you can gain voluntary compliance. And the one thing that we also know about public safety is it's an extension of the homeostasis of the entire community. Because your economy is not going to do well if crime is thriving. People are not going to buy homes in the area if they don't feel safe. You don't want your children to be educated in a community that is not safe. So quality of life issues have to be at the forefront for policing. Because if you take care of the small things and you be proactive, you don't have to be as reactive because you're starting to take care of the small things. That's kind of like, it's come from a study called the broken windows theory. And what they did is they parked a vehicle in the neighborhood and they broke one of the windows. And then they left it there to see what would happen. And sometimes it wasn't just a car, it could be a window in a building. But if you leave that broken thing unattended, people start to tear it up more. So when they left the car in the neighborhood, the window was broken. Next thing you know, both windows were broken. Next thing you know, the ignition was taken out the car, the radio was taken out the car. But guess what? Had somebody come along and repaired that window and locked that car, you would have taken care of a small thing before it escalated to being large. So I think all of these components make up a successful police department. I think that's what I'm looking for in the next police chief. I hope that they have ideas like that. But I think it's always encouraging to have conversations because it is my goal to be a contributor of the community after consuming information. The only way I can contribute successful and make things right is by to consume the information that I'm being given by the people who are affected most. So I think we gotta kind of stand up together. You know, they say if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So I think we should move in a direction to where we are creating partnerships and we are not afraid of each other. And it starts by changing the complexion of the police department so that it bears resemblance to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments, feedback between, anybody want to address anything that anybody said? We heard from everyone. You want to say something? Hey, here. No, wait.
Question to Paul. I know Paul, what I mean? When do they have, the election for, or appointment for police chief? Because the last one was Darryl Roberts, but he was just Darryl Roberts. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just, because we don't get the information. It's always, we the last to know, and then it happens. So how information get out, do we go to the mayor office and then we want it, like she said, we tell them who we want, you know what I mean? So, hey, I'm ready to go down and listen, this is who I want. No, seriously, because, I'm tired of all the gatherings and all this committee, all these, we keep asking, tell them, we demand. I got friends that's downtown, but they come just to get a vote and then they don't do nothing. That's why I said 54 years old, nothing has changed. When I see our own people downtown, we think we're gonna get help. We're still at the bottom. But we get all this money from the buildings, like I said, all these buildings. Pour the money back into the community that you from. So when elections come around, see a few of us on the ballot, but when the chief come, I won't go down there and talk to this mayor. Tell him, like she said, I want Paul. No, for real. Seriously. Yeah, because you're right. They come in here, they already nervous. See cops and, I don't know you. Where you from? Oh, I'm from Simsbury. How you come to Harvard? You didn't live the life in Harvard. So that's my whole point. The information got to get put out to the community. Let's go. Let's support. Let's go.
All right. Did you? All right.
Okay, we have in Hartford called the Hartford City Charter. I was on the Hartford City Council for 6 years, so I'm pretty familiar with the charter and how business is done. Once you elect a mayor And the mayor is a mayor for 4 years in Hartford. It's not that way all over the state, but in Hartford, your mayor is elected for 4 years. And under the city charter, which is the law for the city, that's been elected by the people and determined that these are the laws we agree to. The mayor appoints the chief of police and all the major, department heads. That's the job of the mayor. The mayor in this city right now is holding open forums to find out what people what people are concerned about and who it is that they want or whatever. But the mayor's job is to make the appointment, and under the law, he's the only person who can appoint the police chief. And under the law, I think the police chief then has hiring and firing authority of everyone under them. Okay, but it's definitely the mayor that appoints, and it is under the charter of the city of Hartford.
Yeah, come on on. All right, well, take him the mic.
No, Cynthia, just a question to you. Do you know if the city has a search committee going on? What's the process for the next chief? Because this morning on Channel 63, CBS, Connecticut 23, they had the former chief talking about the process for his successor. And he suggested that there should be somebody from within the police force. He'd like to see that happen because of the reasons that we're talking about now, the relationship, of how they can relate better to the people in the community. But is there a process in place where the city might be they like to pay people for consultant work. Get a research person out there to bring in somebody to fit the bill and then do whatever they want to do.
Okay, so in the past there have been national searches which cost from anywhere up to $100,000 to the taxpayers. Okay, and I'm sorry if you can't, I'm blocking something. The national search is something that is also up to the mayor. So you might do a national search for a local person that the community wants, or you might just the mayor has the ability to bypass a national search and select the person that he or she wants to select.
All right. Just walk up when you want to talk. Come on. Don't be bashful. There we go.
So to answer your question, sir, I would suggest to spread the word and tell everyone, that you've met Paul, Paul, you would like Paul to be the next mayor. Next mayor, the next police chief. Sorry. The next police chief, please edit that out. And just let him know that you like to be the next, you would like him to be the next police chief. If you are feeling up to it, you can write a letter of support. If you know any business owners, you can ask them to write a letter of support and send it to the mayor. Tomorrow is Arunan's Community Day at Tussain. Yes, on Farmington Ave at 7 p.m.
Right, from 7 to 8:30, and that's April the 15th for those of you that are watching this afterwards.
Okay, yes, so it's tomorrow, so let's roll up. I'm just joking. So yeah, I would encourage everybody to come, and I can give you guys reminders if you like. There was something else the national search. We are the national search. We put that money back in our pockets. We tell him, like I said, we tell the mayor. We don't need a national search, 'cause that costs a lot of money. And we don't need someone from an organization out in Wisconsin telling us what we need in Hartford. So I would encourage everyone to become their own independent researchers and be their search for their next police chief.
And
I guess I got to stand. Excuse me, I got a headache. It's a personal issue. But anyway, what sets you apart from the other candidates that are currently on the police department, if that's an issue you want to deal with in public or not? Lieutenant West, because I heard there's at least 4 current members that are up for this job. And I was wondering, because you're going to have something to say, they have something to say, and we all seem to be painting a picture on the same issues. We all see the issues. We've all been here long enough. We're old enough to see what's going on. Can you foresee where if we get up and have 4 different factions supporting 4 different candidates, that we just get shut down? That's my concern now after listening to you. I've also listened to the assistant chief, the current assistant chief, and if you take away the pictures, to put you behind the curtains, I've heard both the issues that pertain to me from both of you. So now I'm confused as to who to support. And I'm sure that's going to happen throughout the city. But if the power of that be take that and say, well, I'm just going to make 4 groups ticked off and do it my way, I can't lose because it's my choice anyway. Do you follow? Does anybody understand what I'm saying on that? So I just want to know what separates the 4 parties that might be involved if we don't do a national search. There you go.
Just call me a PR person. I would like to say, if there's 4 people, take away their faces, take away their names, and look at their credentials, and look at where their heart resides. I don't know about the other individuals. I do know that Paul is one of the highest ranking officers, excluding the individual you're speaking about, who is a captain. I do know that Paul reflects Hartford. The other individual does as well. I think he's Hispanic and like a quarter African American. Yeah, and I do know that Paul has direct ties to Hartford, and the other individual is from New Haven. And I know Paul has 2 master's degrees, and I don't know what the other individual has in terms of education. I know that, oh, okay. So then I know that Paul has served for 22 years. How much has the other person served? 20. Okay. Oh, 3? 3 where? Oh, 3 in Hartford. Okay. So we got 3 in Hartford, 22 in Hartford. And they're from New Haven, so it's a different neighborhood. So yeah. And I guess after that, you would just have to sit there and speak with the individuals and see if you can discern how true they are and how authentic they are. I know I personally, when I get tired of all this stuff going on in Hartford, I say I want to go to South Beach, Florida. And I say that because if I was to go to Florida, one would hope I would not care so much about my surroundings as much as I do for my hometown. Thanks.
I think that one of the things we have to consider is that I am a strong believer that if you are in a community and you are doing work in the community, that you have a history, it shouldn't be what they say they're going to do. It should be what have they done? Where are they from? How familiar are they with our community? And I think everyone has to stand on their own record. So you might ask Lieutenant West how he sees himself different from others, but everyone is going to have their own position on that. But I think we as a community have to start looking at the history of the people that come before us, and not just what they tell us, but what have they done.
And I also like to point out, like maybe you made the instance of I just feel that. You stated that what if we all support 4 people? We did that before, and it did not work out well. And so I'm going to kindly ask everyone if we can just support one person, we can all agree, and we just move forth with that and let our differences aside and just support one person. Thanks.
So I don't want to lock the person who folk are asking questions out. So at any time you want to talk, just come on up. But at the end of the day, as you mentioned, the chief executive is going to pick. And something that this gentleman here said I thought was very important, and you know, Attorney Jennings addressed that. There are a lot of people in the community who have, one, they have no idea who the current chief is. Two, for many, Darrell Roberts was the last chief. There's been several chiefs between him and the current one. And also, I thought the comment you made that impacted me the most was that most of the community will find out who the next chief is when he's selected. They don't even know that there is a selection process going on. So it's important that people participate in the process. When there are information sessions such as the one we're having here, when there's any opportunity to speak on these things, that people attend, that you get people to come out. Because if you do, like, you know, the double-blind study, certainly everybody is qualified. So what is it that at the end of the day is going to make the particular candidate the candidate? You know, I don't mind publicly saying, because I've said it publicly for the last 3 years, that Paul is my choice. But that, I don't get to pick. You see what I'm saying? And so the community can have a big say in who the next chief is, who the next fire chief would be, who the superintendent of schools would be. But the community has to participate. And so, in my never to be humble opinion, people have to start asking the right questions in public. I think it's a good thing that you are now debating who to pick, because prior to that, you had somebody. Right. So when people are informed, now they can ask the questions. You know, Hartford's a small enough town that you could call up all of these people and ask them to have a coffee with you. Call them up and see if they have a coffee with you. And you sit down and ask them questions. It's not like New York City where you can't never even think about talking to the police chief. In Hartford, you might see the police chief shopping for food. Okay, so it is important that we participate and that we have an understanding of what public safety is. Because the reason we're here today is to talk about public safety so that people can understand that they have to be the architects of the type of public safety we have. If a community is self-policing, and as some have suggested, we need officers that know us, then we as a community also have to be encouraging our community to become police officers. You know, if we don't have young Black and Latino men and women that don't want to become cops because for whatever reason they think this is not good, or they're going to be looked at as snitches or whatever the case is because they're standing up for, you know, their community, then we have to change that. You see what I'm saying? We have to change that. There should be churches all across, mosques, synagogues, they should across the city who are saying, we have 8 candidates who want to become police officers. So that when you see police officers in training running down the street in Hartford, you can see some of them that look like we look and not like folks from outside the community. So we have to take an active role in that public safety discussion. We have some people who have joined us since we started.
And if they would like to talk, what the question that we were asking people is, when it comes to public safety, when it comes to policing, what is it that you want to see? And if you'd like to, you can please step up and you know, ask that question.
I got to answer his question because he asked a difficult question, and I don't want anybody to say I ran away from any questions. All right? So it's difficult to talk about yourself and not sound arrogant. That's the first thing I want to say. But I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question. I don't want you to answer. I just want you to ponder it because you seem to be very pensive. When you met the other candidates or you talked to the other candidates, I would wager that it was in a setting that they were in uniform and they were getting paid, that it wasn't on their own time, that they didn't show up in their own clothes, and they didn't show up as a concerned community member. That's one of the things that separates me. Number two, my mother grew up in Bellevue Square. My grandmother lives off of Blue Hills. My other grandmother lived in Nelton Court. My history, my roots, the kind of the creations of what made me me all happened here. I'm not from the Elm City. I'm not from any other place but here. So when you think about somebody understanding your experiences, I would think the familiarity of someone who actually was from here that can walk the streets. I walk the streets in a sweatsuit, t-shirt, jeans. They see me. I'm not in uniform. I'm out here, and people know me both as just Paul and as a cop. I think that's invaluable when you're looking for a police chief. I asked the previous police chief before he left, I said, if you took everybody in your command staff and you placed us in a jeans and t-shirt in front of the police department, and you said, you walk this way, you walk this way, you walk that way, I said, which of us would be stopped to have a regular conversation? He looked at me and he said, you. That makes me different. So when you talk about my collective experiences and the fact that I cut my teeth in Hartford, both personally and professionally, no one else can tell you that. I've also had the opportunity to be the first commander of our recruitment and retention division. That started in 2015. You seem very well read. In 2015, President Obama came out with a task force on police, and I think I mentioned it earlier, and that said that the police department and the community should reflect itself. During my time commanding that, we had an 80% increase in city residents, minority, and women applicants. I stand on that record. I stand on that. I walk here. I've come here for parties. I've come here for repasses. I've come here now to speak to you about some of my thoughts. And this was not supposed to be about me or even a police chief, but since the question is here, I'm not running from nothing. So that is what makes me separate and apart from any other candidate that you may see.
All right. And then we'll have Violette after. You can go after.
I want to really give a shout out to the president of the Greater Hartford African American Alliance, James Stanley McCauley, for, you know, really stepping up and doing a good job, waiting out there for an hour and a half just to make sure we had this forum to be able to speak. I forgot what the topic was about. Policing? You know, policing. But I want to address the common attorney, excuse me, not attorney, Chief Paul West. I don't know, he looked at me, he must have seen that look, because we had just literally came from Mount Olive when he spoke. Let me give you some advice. Speak for yourself, because you speak better for yourself than anybody else does. I want to say that. You don't need nobody to speak for you. I appreciate you answering this gentleman's question. That was important. It was important for me to hear. Don't let nobody else jump up and answer your question. You know, please, you know, I'm saying, please take that to heart, because you sound better than everybody else answering your question. So he answered the question that you wanted to hear, right? So I waited for you to get there, so thank you. But that's what I'm saying. You don't let nobody else be your publicist or public relation. When you go down with Mount Olive, I brought you over there. Did I speak for you? Did I jump up? You spoke for yourself. Continue to do that, because you got a lot of respect from the church over here to this community event. I want to say there's more men in here than women. I applaud all y'all, because that's important. We had that conversation across the street. You know, so the women, I was saying, okay, men are out here speaking, and it's like, well, women need to come and wives. There's men out there, they're the ones out there shooting everybody. We need y'all to stand up and address it and combat that situation. A woman should not always have to be out there the first one on the front line. Men stand up and protect us. So I really appreciate where you're coming from. Thank you, everybody, for coming. That's what I want to say. I wanted to address him because it's like we've been together all morning long, and I heard what he said to the pastor and what the pastor said. And this is to your point. He said we should be involved in every appointment, every election. This is a community of 80% black and brown. And I know they always want to say you separate church from state, but it's amazing how the politicians don't separate church from state when they want to run up in your pulpit. So everybody needs to be, us. We need to be here. We need to be supportive. You keep doing what you're doing, brother, because you're doing a good job. Thank you, President Stan McCauley. Those are my comments.
Thank you for sharing. Ms. Haldane. Your thoughts and comments as it pertains to, public safety and policing. Whatever they may be, take your time. You're not under any pressure to speak quickly.
Okay.
So,
what's important to me is how am I treated? And I have a couple experiences I'll share. I used to live in Windsor, and I called the police because my son his bike got stolen from him with him on it. And when the kids stole the bike, they also, I don't say beat him, they kicked him, whatever. They stole his iPhone and they went off. I called the police to report it. And when they came, they kept on asking him what did he do and who were the kids who stole the bike. Like it was his fault. He should have come home when I told him to come home. But kids being kids, he's gonna hang out with his friend and come home together. His friend didn't come with him, he came by himself. So I was trying to explain to the policeman, he was on his way home and they wanted the bike, so they took it. And he treated us very badly. He kept on saying, well, he knows who did it. Blah, blah, blah. So I finally said, my son does not go to Windsor High. He goes to Kingswood, Oxford. Completely 360. Oh, and suddenly we had respect. Suddenly we didn't have to know who stole the bike. It was like a completely different scenario. So, to me, public safety and policing is when I call you and say, I have a situation, you believe me, don't treat me like I'm the one that did the act, or my kid is the one that did the act. So, that's the number one thing to me. How do you treat me? Because we got good policemen, some not so good. And I hate to say this, but just because you're black don't always mean that you're for us. So it's more about the respect and how do you value me as a member of your community or as a member of a resident of the town in which you work. That's what's important to me. Having respect for the people that pay you.
all right.
Oh, another thing, public safety. Like I said, I lived in Windsor, and like I drive to Granby and all this stuff, and I see these people walking these paths. I lived in my neighborhood. I never felt safe. I lived 18 years on the street, and I never really went walking because it was isolated. I grew up in Philadelphia, New York, LA, so I'm used to the city. I don't feel safe walking where there's nobody coming by. I'm like, somebody can snatch my butt and do whatever they want to do, and I won't be missed for a while. So public safety to me means also feeling safe and comfortable where you are. I feel safer walking down Blue Hills Avenue in Hartford than I did in the suburbs. And no, you will not find me in Granby walking the paths, the trail paths and stuff. That to me is not safety. And everybody's got their own definition, but some things that people view as a negative, or I would never walk on Albany Avenue, I'm not coming to Hartford, all of those things, to me, I'm safe with black people around me. I feel safer with black people around me than I do with other people around me.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments that people would like to make? Come on up. Don't be bashful, brother.
Like you said, Paul, as far as like the undermanned department, I know we turned this into a campaign support for this ball, but I'm always in the newspaper, and I see all this money coming in to help fund and curb crime in the city of Hartford. Where they get this money from, I don't know. But why are there smaller police forces in like Bloomfield, Simsbury, Avon? They don't have the heavy crime that we have. I feel they should, allocate it more so where the problem is, rather than folks scared to cross Blue Hills into Windsor because they sit for traffic. Folks don't like going down Cottage Grove Road for the traffic cops. They have small police forces, but yet their pay is higher. I've talked to officers from different but y'all don't do nothing. Y'all don't have the issues that the inner city have. The north end. North end is I love it because I'm a barber, so I talk to everybody. How is it Hartford police force is undermanned when folk downtown asking for money? Like I said, I keep going to building all these schools. That's the money the police force need to man our force so we can have more patrols. I remember the foot patrols. They could come by, did it, you know what I mean? I remember when Mayor Bronin, he came up, I was sitting there with my friends. He had just got some money for the building on West 5 Corners. Yet gonna say in the same breath, man, we broke. How we broke? He just got $2-3 million for that building. But we undermanned. How is a problem city undermanned? We need our public safety. Like you said, it's just about you just stopping all criminals, like you said. The officer friendly program. I was a child, I wanted to be a police officer or a firefighter. No more of that. That's, to me, was public safety. They coming out to reach out and we you know what I'm saying, we have a connection. So it's no more connection, but I'm just, how are these people getting this money and we don't get it? That's my issue, you know what I mean, with downtown. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, we need, this community. Everything thrive off of Hartford. So when you bust our kids out, Hartford got to pay for that child to go where they go. I know teachers, so I'm just saying, but that's still, keep the money, like you said, bump that national cert. Listen, I'm gonna be at that thing. I'm talking to the mayor. Hey, yo, like I'm hood talk. Yo, come on, man. Let's get it. I mean, because it's going on too long. I'm talking to Brandon. I'm gonna talk to Bobby. I'm gonna talk to Doug. Everybody. They from here. We all born in Hartford. Whatever hospital is in Hartford. I don't get. Listen. I just don't get it. How are we undermanned in our police force?
Let him, well, okay, you go.
I'm just going to answer because of the history involved, and I am a student of history. If you fix the problem, you don't have to fix the problem, so you don't get paid to fix the problem. Can you run that back to me when I just? No, if you fix the problem, you don't get paid to fix the problem. So you keep the problem around so you can continue to get paid to fix the problem. That's what's going on in Hartford. No, Ms. Jennings, I'll call you Ms. Jennings in public. In 1985, we sat on the board when they first started community development block grants in the city of Hartford. And we had to challenge the city authority to get money for programs for the youth. The money that came in went to police overtime. At the same time, they were cutting back Parks and Rec. So they were fueling the problem. And here we are, 30-something years later, talking about the same problems. And you're right, there's a lot of money coming into this community to fix the problem. A lot more than that first community development block grant, because, like you said, you got Bloomfield Police, they're doing what they want because the citizens demanded. Windsor, the citizens demanding the police have more respect. I used to work with the Boy Scouts. I took a group of kids out of Stowe Village, and when they got to the west end of Hartford, there was a fight in the car because one kid wanted to throw something outside the window, some trash. I said, you know what? You got it backwards. You'll do it in your neighborhood, but you're worried about this man's neighborhood. It's all about perception. You perceive yourself to be an underdog, you're going to get treated like that. If you take care of your neighborhood and demand respect for your neighborhood, you'll get it. It's the squeaky wheel syndrome. You got it, but you got to want it. You can't say, oh, you can't throw stuff over here because these people, they're not worried about you. You should be worried about your neighborhood and take care of it. And if that idea get around, it's all about perception, and we could just work together and just say, we're going to make this the community of choice. Okay, not like the people in Palestine having to wait for the Israelis to pour water on them and bomb them at the same time and just get mad because they got an attitude? Come on. It's all about perceptions.
All right, and just before you say that, I can guarantee you that everybody knows about this meeting that needs to know. So the way we invite people is everyone gets the same invitation at the same time, and the folk that wanted to be here are here. This is, they have to come on their own, so I thank you for coming.
Well, I'm trying my best to answer your questions today, although there will probably be some retribution. And when that happens, I'll be coming to get a couple of dollars from y'all. But I agree with a lot of things you said about the shortage in staffing. But I think one of the things you got to look at is the culture of the police department. In the last 5 years, 140 officers have left the department. So that speaks volumes about the culture and the toxicity that exists in the police department. Now, the administrators, the powers that be, will tell you that it's a national challenge. It's happening nationally. I push back vigorously on that, because these officers are leaving Hartford to go to other places to be police officers. If it's a national trend, you don't leave policing one town or city and go to another. And when people talk about money, you know how much money you're getting paid when you first apply for the job. So you've agreed to those terms. And most people who do public safety or public service, should I say, they don't get into it for the money. They get into it because they feel like it's a labor of love. And when you love your community and you love the places that you have sworn to protect and serve, money is not as big of a determinant as your quality of life. So when your quality of life goes down the tube because the administration doesn't understand, that they don't care, that you're just there to do their bidding, you leave. And the reason you leave is because you're looking for a quality of life improvement. It's not just the money. But there are some factors that could be fixed that they don't want to fix because there's a system in place. And you hear a lot of people often say that the system is broken. I argue that all the time because I don't believe the system is broken. I believe it's working exactly the way it's intended to work. And it's not set up in a structure and a way for people who look like us to thrive and succeed. But keep in mind, we are not the minority. We're the majority in Hartford. And once we realize that and we wake up to the fact that we are the majority, then things have to change that make us comfortable, that make us happy, that make us thrive. So when we leave here today and we talk to our friends and family, we got to tell them the information that we shared today. We got to tell them how we felt after sharing knowledge with each other, and we got to get double and triple this next time. But word of mouth is one of the most effective ways to pass information. So we got to do that. We got to tell the administration what we want. One thing that I think is going on, I don't know the mayor well. I've only met him a couple of times at like those speed meetings that he's had with other people. But it does appear that he is listening to the community, he wants to hear the community. So if that's the case and he's sincere with that, then we got to let him hear it. And then my whole notion with all of this stuff is I don't want him to tell me no. I don't want him to tell Bridget no. I don't want him to tell Stan no. Let him tell the community no. Let him tell the community yes, because collectively we are strong. And if we go and we just stand alone, our voice is so much diminished. We have to amplify each other's voices by standing together as a community and demanding what we want. These people are elected and they're put in place based on the votes that are cast by the very community that they have to serve. So now that they're in place, task them to do what they said they would do.
All right. Okay, all minds and hearts are settled. All right. Sounds good. Then we will, we will remain here for at least I'll stay here till 4, and in case somebody decides to stop by, and we can add their voice to the voices that have already been captured. But apart from that, I guess we can take. You still want some? You guys want to say something? Yeah, I have a question about the. Absolutely. About the armed patrol. Okay. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Well, we're talking about all kinds of stuff, public safety, but the floor is yours.
Safety.
Talk whatever.
Public safety.
That is public
well,
safety.
The armed patrol brigade, and I want to say this because we had this conversation. Mm-hmm. Stan and I had this conversation about other parts of Hartford, the west end of Hartford. And people in the west end who do not have the same problems as people in the north end have apparently been welcoming because, their cars might have been broken into. What else? What other kind of issues? Windows might have been broken out, things of that nature. However, they're not ducking and dodging bullets. So you're happy that this is my, analysis. You're happy because they have now come into the community and may be protecting your tangibles, your personal items, and it's about your car. Like out in the suburbs, that's a big thing. They passed legislation about carjackings. And I was like, what about life jackings? You know, you're not focused on somebody's life being jacked in the North End. You're focused on your Lexus or whatever being jacked in Granby or not Bloomfield. Bloomfield is like us. Wherever, Greenwich or wherever. And so my question or my comment is about the armed patrols that are really kind of getting some support. And I know we've had a conversation too. I don't want to put you on the spot, Lieutenant West, but we've had a conversation about shouldn't there be some responsibility? Shouldn't law enforcement or the mayor's office be taking an active role, because you do have a right to possess a gun? But to your point, Ms. Shante, how are you? You know, we had a conversation previously about the armed patrol brigade, and if you're in this neighborhood, we know that when somebody knows you have a gun, and the killings may be more retaliatory, or even the act of you having a gun. You know, now you put the community in a situation where you may get caught in the crossfire by somebody just knowing you have a gun and somebody coming out looking for you because you have that gun. So, you know, it's been a snowball effect. So this is my position about the armed patrols. They are a danger. You know, they may be of a benefit to a community that doesn't want their windows broken and their possessions taken out of their car or their car stolen. But it's an issue in a community that is already plagued with guns. So this is actually how the conversation began a few weeks ago. People in the north end of Hartford having a problem with the armed patrols. So I understand they're still in effect. They're still moving around the city, but I think there's some laws that probably need to be addressed. So I mean that's the conversation right there that started this you know, this two-part series that we're having. So I don't know if anybody had any thoughts about the armed patrol. I thought that was important because this is how we started. Anybody got any thoughts about it? You ain't got no thoughts about it?
I mean, I agree with it.
Okay.
I agree with them.
Why do you agree with it?
Well, because in the beginning, you wasn't in the beginning. And,
No, I wasn't.
and it was, public safety just doesn't have to mean we have guns. It's just revitalizing our community that we live in.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? We you know, like the village raised the child. That's the concept I get from, you know, public safety, police and patrol. If you bring back the village, I feel that would alleviate a lot of problems. In my instance, growing up in the 70s, like I said, project, everybody was either your aunt or your uncle. Knowing they wasn't. Got my bike stolen on Albany Avenue. Back then, no cell phones, nothing. My mother knew my bike was stolen before I got home. Mm. From Albany Avenue to Mark Twain Drive. How did she know? I'm walking. So it's the village that will bring our community back together. Because I go down Scarborough Street or Elizabeth Park, families, walking dogs, kids. Bloomfield was the same way when I moved there. Keep your door open, got a pool, you know, two-parent homes. I believe that village was broken, and that the systematic system that's in broke the man away from the mother. Mm-hmm. So when you do that, put kids at odds. I'm a product of a single-parent home, so, but my mother was the law. My daddy was my dad. Mm-hmm. You know, so like I said, we need the village come together, and that includes everybody, every public servant that we have and we pay with taxes and everything. Listen, I'm not one to carry a gun, but most of my friends carry guns because they scared of their own people. Why? You ain't do nothing to them. But it's education is poor. No father, no mother. It breeds chaos. Again, we go back to officer friendly and the firefighters. Like I said, we need all that to come back. Like you said, the reaction department was going away back then. That was something to do. Give the kids something to do. The PAL. What happened to that? You know what I'm saying? I mean, no programs for the kids. After school study. Nothing. Everybody was part of the village. No more. So it's not just, because we thinking about, she could be, man, like you said, with rifles. No, we ain't trying to shoot nobody. We trying to cure our community ills. Let's do it. And like I said, I'm disappointed too. Like I said outside, y'all can hold church every Sunday. Take one Sunday off and come in and address this problem. They won't do it because it puts money in their pocket. People begging to get better. I'm not begging to get better. I'm going to do better. I'm going to teach one, and I hope that one teaches. I'm telling you. But like I said, be somebody from this community that knows this community. All this going outside, bringing somebody in, never worked. Never. That's all I'm saying. Bring the village back. All right.
I didn't get to answer. So you said I agree with, and then you said
no. I agree with the addition. Like we can have our control, but some of that is negative.
Right, here, use this. So we can capture that. Yeah. Because he did go over, this was some of a discussion a little bit
right,
earlier.
So I agree with it, but I don't look at it as it being negative. I don't see it, I mean, I haven't seen them. I know Cornell West, so it's like, they coming down the street look like they gangsters. You know what I'm saying? Because the kids see a police officer and like quiet boys. Once they leave, back to what they do. Hey, we got, like she said, bring the men. Let the men do something. Let the men. Period. That's why the churches should be here. All these pastors that take our money and do nothing with it, have them in here. Like I said, I'm gonna put pressure on the mayor tomorrow. Trust me, I'm gonna put the pressure on him. I don't know how much power we have as far as, man, listen, let's go, or you won't get our vote. Period. That's how it go.
All right, there's, I've heard a lot of different people since we had our first meeting relative to the patrols. And there's this a split in terms of folks for and against. But I don't think that there needs to be, I think we need to find a way that we work together. And I think what Lieutenant West talked about earlier is how that gets resolved. And I thought that was a pretty good way to deal with it. Would you like to talk about anything in terms of public safety or policing? It's okay. All right. Then we will probably adjourn.
Good afternoon. My name is Shantae Brody. As far as policing, our topic, I don't think the police department and the way that they've been doing as of the last recent years is not effective policing. I don't know if that's because they don't have enough officers as they claim, but for sure, community policing needs to be reintroduced in some shape, form, or fashion. A few years ago, I remember at an NRZ meeting, it was said that it was being reintroduced, and it was being reintroduced like each neighborhood, and it was going to be a start in the Northeast. So you'll see some patrol officers on foot. I think that was very short-lived. I may have seen that once, but I think if we have a police force that thinks they're not going to know the community and be respectful of the community and gain the trust of the community, that something is going to change. It's obviously not. So that's my opinion on policing. I do believe we have to police ourselves, but there is so much going on that without a collective effort, I don't think we'll ever achieve that. When I say collective effort, I mean neighbors looking out for neighbors, police being visible and responsive and respectful, minus the brigade folks. So that's my opinion.
All right. Yeah. Step on up to the mic.
Sorry the gentleman left, but I wanted to make sure whoever had their other comment made their comment. So there's a comment that we all have, all of my friends that I know, we all have guns because we are worried about them shooting up at us. And why? Because we haven't done anything to them. So these are black men talking about all the other black men in the community. So, you know, everybody got their opinion about what the issue is and how they may want to resolve it. But we have guns because we're afraid of them, because I'm just a little dumbfounded by this whole thing. You know what I'm saying? So the solution is we're all going to get guns because we haven't done anything to them, but we think, or they might shoot us, and it's okay. Like, there's an obvious problem with law enforcement. That's a huge problem, specifically here in Hartford, Connecticut. I have a strong position that the chief of police right now, the current chief of police, Jason Thody, is a problem. You cannot come to me, you might go to somebody else, but you cannot come to me and take any, let me even entertain any of his recommendations. I'm going to say the same thing about the mayor, the current mayor. You have a lot of people who had a huge problem with Mayor Luke Bronin, who recommended and pushed and advocated and campaigned for the new mayor, which I find quite amazing, because how do you take the recommendation of somebody that you can't stand to bring in? So I am definitely against Chief Thody, and hopefully, and I'm going to say this about Lieutenant West, because I've heard some of his plans, and I know he keeps some of them close to his vest, literally, in his vest, because, you know, people will take your creative ideas or your thoughts or your plans and run with it and say they're theirs. So I understand why he reveals only so much, but when you start revealing who you are and where you're from and your foundation, and mention, you know, the communities that are now gone, that you would only know about it if you were part of that community, you got my respect, I mean. And you look very chiefly. No, serious. you know, and you speak well. Again, I have to emphasize that. But I don't know how you process the fact that, you know, black men need to have guns and they're happy about guns because they have to protect themselves against their younger generation. And these are our sons and our nephews and our grandsons and our cousins and everything else. So I find that to be kind of absurd. I got a son. Whatever, like, okay, I have a problem with him, so I'm scared of him, so I'm going to get me a gun. No, he needs to be scared of me. You understand what I'm saying? So this is a whole issue that has to be resolved in our community, because I've heard something that I haven't heard before. You know, that's why we all walk around with guns, because we're afraid of our nephews and our cousins and our grandsons. So this is why we need guns. So I really wanted to say that, because that is troubling to me. You understand what I'm saying? To hear the reason why all black men need to walk around and have other guns. And the thing about it, what you don't even realize, they're downtown laughing at all this old black community. They don't have to come out here and shoot you. We just heard it. You're gonna have guns and shoot each other up. And we don't even seem to see that this is all part of their plan. You gave a history about policing being, you know, policing has been developed because they were original slave catchers. I mean, you don't think they're downtown laughing at everybody? You don't think they're still making bets in the dead pool? You know, so this is the solve, this is the resolve. Yeah, have your Second Amendment rights, but for this to be your solution, we're just gonna all have guns because in case they decide to shoot us? There's just got to be a better way in this community, because this is not happening anywhere else except for in the urban communities. Thank you.
I don't know that that's the resolve. I think that that's the opinion of some, but not everybody. So that's why we have these conversations, so that we can hear from folk, because, you know, a lot of people don't hear these types of things, and so it's important that that we hear from everybody.
I have a question and then a comment. So my question is, after all of these discussions, is there going to be any recommendation or action plan, or what next? And maybe you can tell me that afterwards.
Okay. Well, our purpose for being here is to hear from the community on all of these points, so that in subsequent meetings of the African American Alliance, we meet every Saturday morning virtually via Zoom, and we have robust and challenging discussions at length, and from those discussions about this issue come up with a resolution that we can then present to the mayor and city council. And at that point, we'll have a press conference with what we resolve to know. But before we, as an organization, just come up with what we think, we thought it would be better to hear from the community. So we invited the community. So that's our next step, is to come up with a resolve. Because obviously, we don't have the authority to implement fixes. So we have to, you know, make our presentations to the general public.
I disagree with that.
Well, I mean, we can ask and demand, but at the end of the day, we're, you know, but go on.
Okay, so I keep thinking about our community and how we have to have a code of conduct or a code of behavior. I see how our kids, how our community acts on Albany Avenue, because I'm on Albany Avenue a lot. And the minute they cross Scarborough, the things that they do on this side of the street, they would never do on this side of the street. So that lets me know that there is a code of conduct. There are values that our community ascribes to the other side of Scarborough and Albany, that they do not subscribe to our side of Albany. And so it's like we know what to do. So to me, the question is, why don't we value what we have? And then when we lose it, we talk about gentrification, and people came and took this and took that, and we bemoan what we lost or don't have. But when we have it, we don't take care of it or value it. And that's the thing that keeps me up at night. How could we change the mindset of our community? And it's not just young people, it's adults. Last summer, I was shocked at the number of men I saw pissing in public. I had never seen that before in Hartford. I saw McKinney Park, Golden Cross, pull up to the side of the building and just piss. I'm like, what is going on? When did men feel it was okay to pee in public? And so it's like we don't value what we have. We don't appreciate it. And then when someone else has it, suddenly it becomes important and we're upset. So I don't know people's thoughts, what people think we can do, because when they cross that street and don't behave that way, they don't throw trash out the window, it lets me know that we know better. So I'm just asking.
To your point, yeah, there are certain people that don't value. I wouldn't make it a blanket statement like we don't or the community doesn't. And there does need to be a code of conduct. But these are very overarching societal issues. We can see that these things need to happen, but then how do you implement them becomes a very, very big project. Certainly we as individuals can begin that process, but if somebody is doing something, then someone has to speak up about it. Excuse me, you can't be doing that. But people don't do that. That's how it starts. And so until we're willing to speak up, it's not going to be done.
Thank you, G. That's funny because I was trying to tie back because when you had asked about the armed patrol thing, I'm still not fully sure about how I feel about that. But one thing that what's being said now is getting me to think about is, so now we have us patrolling our own communities with weapons, right? And one of my fears about that is, are we now replicating that hierarchy of power that we've seen with, you know, how you said people see the police as, an occupying force, right? Are we now doing that in our own communities? And are we saying, well, this young black person looks like they could be up to trouble. I'm going to walk down the street and then announce that I'm armed, etc. And when we were talking out in the parking lot, I was like, do they do that when they walk through the West End? Or do they just walk down the street in the West End? But when they walk through the North End, then they're saying, I'm armed, I'm et cetera, right? Like, how are we treating our own people? Because we could very easily start to reproduce the same systems and the same behaviors that we don't like other people doing to us, right? It's like when someone comes from a home where there was abuse, they tend to abuse later on in relationships, right? So things like that, I'm afraid of us doing that. When I do think, similar to the police, if we have more police officers just being able to know the community, be able to speak to community as human beings, seeing them in their sweats and t-shirts and etc. Now when something comes up, I'm like, oh, that's Officer so-and-so. I seen him at the park playing basketball or whatever have you, right? The same way as if we are living in our community, it's much easier. This is what made me want to stand up, because when you said somebody to be able to stand up and say, hey man, you can't do that around here. we can do that just as people without a weapon on us, right? But that goes back to that, am I afraid of the young black folks that I'm seeing in my community? Or do I understand that that's me 10, 20, 15 years ago? You know what I mean? That's, I think, the difference between having armed patrols and us just getting back to that community. That's how brother was mentioned. His bike got stolen and his mother found out before he even made it home. That's community, right? That's not anybody saying, oh, well, you stole his bike. I have a pistol on me. Give it back. You know what I mean? That's saying, oh, snap, what's going on? Do you know who did it? I don't know. I think that was Miss Johnson's nephew or whatever have you, right? That's what I think is important. And for black men like myself, if we're going to be involved in the community, to make sure that we're building respectful relationships with the generation that's underneath us. Because without that, there was a quote, and I'm going to mess up this quote, but it's something along the lines of, nobody cares what you know until they know that you care. And I think that's a big one for our young people is we want to tell them this and tell them that and tell them that, but it's like, do you even care about me as a human being? And if we can get there, then it's a lot easier to say, hey, man, don't pee outside. Hey, man, don't be, blasting your music when you're going by Ms. Johnson's house or whatever it is. Things like that in that sense of what you call it, the code of conduct, right? That then becomes a thing for us because it's easier for us to have that conversation if we know each other as people, get back to neighborhoods first. Yeah, that's right.
All right. So in closing, let me suggest that this is one of the reasons why leadership matters and who is setting the tone. Because if you have the right police chief, they then set that tone. They set that tone through their staff. They set that tone through the police officers. It then goes out into the city. Communities are self-policing. They're self-educating and they're self-sustaining. All right. In a city that's impacted by poverty, it's very hard for the individuals impacted by poverty to sustain themselves economically. But they most certainly can sustain themselves in terms of they certainly can be in charge of their education and they can be in charge of their policing. So, I always say suburbanites do have armed patrols. They're just legally sanctioned to be law enforcement. Their neighbors are the police. They understand the rules of the law. So when you have individuals who are untrained and don't know the law, and they start being subjective as to who's guilty, and as you suggested, if they're saying, well, you look dangerous, and you're walking up to somebody, yo, man, you better stop, otherwise I'm going to take care of it. So what is that about? Is that about power? Is that about being afraid? Or is it about really engaging someone who you see and helping them to resolve their issue? That's what the police officers do. Police officers are among the first responder groups. These people are willing to put their lives on the line to help you. So that the police aren't bad. There may be some bad apples in the department, but if you don't have good leadership who can hold those individuals accountable, that's where things start to break down. So we really need to support those that are in the positions of leadership, which comes when you have good police chief. And so these things are all solvable, but you have to have the right assets or the right individuals in those positions for them to actually be resolved. And then you see a change, whether they're clergy, whether they're the nonprofit, whether they're business leaders, whether they're law enforcement. All of these people have to be in the right position. So with that, we will adjourn, and I thank everyone for joining us, and we look forward to the next time we convene, and you all will join us. Thank you.